السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا زدنا علما اللهم فقهنا في الدين اللهم آمين. Dear children, how are you all doing today? We hope that you all are in the best state of Iman and health. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you all protected and grant you all the goodness of both worlds. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you all to learn and understand the Quran and to follow the Quran in your lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose you for His deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you all the best sadaqah jariyah for your parents. Allahumma ameen. Our lesson today is ayah number 74 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Let us first see the word-to-word translation of this ayah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ثم, then, قست, hardened, قلوبكم, your hearts, من بعد, after, ذلك, that, فهي, so they, كالحجارة, became like the stones, أو, or, أشد, stronger, قسوة, in hardness, وإن, and indeed, من, from, الحجارة, the stones, لما, certainly which, meaning certainly there are some which, يتفجر, gush forth, منه, from it, الأنهار, the rivers, وإن, and indeed, منها, from them, لما, certainly there are some which, يشقق, split, فيخرج, so comes out, منه, from it, الماء, the water, وإن, and indeed, منها, from them, لما, certainly there are some which, يهبط, fall down, من, from, خشيتي, fear, Allah, of Allah, وما الله, and Allah is not, بغافل, unaware, عما, of what, تعملون, you do. ثم قست قلوبكم من بعد ذلك فهي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة وإن من الحجارة لما يتفجر منه الأنهار وإن منها لما يشقق فيخرج منه الماء وإن منها لما يهبط من خشية الله وما الله بغافل عما تعملون. Then after that your hearts became hardened, so they being like rocks or even worse in hardness. And indeed of the rocks are that out of which rivers gush forth. And indeed of them, meaning of the rocks, are that which split up so the water comes out from them. And indeed of them are that which falls down for fear of Allah, and Allah is not unaware of what you do. So in the previous ayah, there was a mention of a very big miracle. That miracle was that of a dead body coming to life. So let us just recap a bit. There was a man of Bani Israel who was killed, and the murderer was not to be found. Bani Israel also started saying to Musa alayhi salam to ask Allah to tell them who the murderer is. So Prophet Musa alayhi salam prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Musa alayhi salam to ask Bani Israel to slaughter a cow, then hit a piece of the cow's meat onto the dead man's body, and then they can ask the dead man itself to tell them who the murderer was. So it happened. The Bani Israel brought the cow to sacrifice after asking so many questions. They asked many questions because they didn't want it to sacrifice the cow, as they had the immense love of the cow in them. They thought the cow was holy. So in the end, with so much difficulty, the cow was slaughtered. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them do this so that the love of cow from their hearts is taken out. So we should also know that there is wisdom in all of Allah's plan. And as we saw before, the other purpose for slaughtering the cow was that to find out the murderer of the person. This was a big miracle. After witnessing this miracle, the children of Israel should have recognized Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their hearts should have softened. After this, they should have believed in their hearts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely bring them back to life on the day of judgment. They should have started preparing for their afterlife instead of collecting the wealth in this world. But sadly, after seeing the miracles, their hearts hardened even more. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us how the hearts of Bani Israel turned after seeing all these miracles from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Firstly, it is being said, ثم قست قلوبكم من بعد ذلك فهي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة. Then after observing the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with their own eyes, their hearts hardened like stones. In fact, their hearts became even harder than stones. Their hearts were more distanced now from the teaching of Torah. So what is the lesson for us in this? We learn that when someone becomes far, when someone moves away from the teaching of their book, then the miraculous signs in the nature by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is spread throughout in this world will not affect them. Yes, they will not acknowledge the greatness of the beauty and the signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spread around them. So it is said that their hearts have become much harder than stones, because even stones, they may have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they may soften. So in the next part of this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارَةِ لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْهُ الْأَنْهَارُ. And indeed from the stones there are certainly some from which the river starts flowing. For example, the stone from where the Zamzam water came out. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَشَّقَّقُ فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءُ. And indeed from it certainly there are some stones which split apart and then water comes out from it. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَهْبِطُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. And indeed from it certainly there are some which falls down from the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You must have heard about landsliding. Yes? It's nothing but the stones falling from above the mountains. Over here it is being said that there are many kinds of stones. The hard stones also turn soft sometimes. Sometimes fountains and rivers flows from it, and sometimes they fall and break down from the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Unfortunately, the hearts of Bani Israel could not be softened from the message that was given by Musa alayhi salam, or the commands of Torah. Neither did the signs of Allah that is spread out in the universe, nor did the miracle of the dead person coming to life soften their hearts. Even after witnessing all this, they were still the same. Their hearts did not change. This was because their hearts had turned much harder than stones. Dear children, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring a dead person back to life in this world, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do that on the day of judgment as well. This world is a test. We are doing a test, and on the day of judgment, we will get the result of this test. The hearts become hardened by disobeying the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by corruption and abuse, and by doing sins. So when the person keeps doing these things over and over again, their heart becomes so hardened that they are unable to understand and accept the truth. Then such people, they don't want to study Quran, don't want to listen to the tilawah. They just move far, far away from the book of Allah. وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah is not unaware of what you do. Allah knows if we read the Quran daily or not. Allah knows if we understand the commands of Allah given to us in the Quran or not. Allah knows if we are acting upon those teachings of the Quran or not. So over here, there is the greatest advice for us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always watching whatever we are doing. Whether we do a small deed or a big one, a good one or a bad one, Allah is watching us. The two angels on our sides, Kiraman and Katibin, are writing everything we do. On the day of judgment, we will be given our result sheet, and we will be answerable to all the deeds we have done. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not unmindful of our deeds. Therefore, we should not spend our lives in ignorance. We should learn the Quran with its translation and explanation, and we should obey all the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we are saved from the bad end in the Akhirah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the opportunity to do our best always. Allahumma ameen. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.